people on. So we might just officially kick off. Thanks, guys. Loved hearing all your pizza topping flavors. So hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. I'm Stephanie Perez Israel, and I'm the marketing manager for monday.com in ANZ. And I'm super excited to kick off our very first episode of the Amplify Your Marketing series. Now, this series will cover the latest insights and trends in the creative marketing industry, and we'll be discussing ways to help marketing teams out there who, are striving to be more efficient, want to deliver more impactful campaigns, and want to drive those better results. So this series is all about helping you guys. So if you have any challenges or bottlenecks that you'd like for us to discuss in a future topic, feel free to share this with us in the feedback form after the webinar, or if it's top of mind at the moment, send it to us in a comment to the panelists. And we can definitely create more episodes and more content based on what you guys want to hear. All right, so I'll kick off with some housekeeping. So audio issues. So if you have any audio issues, check your audio settings. Make sure it's on the right speaker or you've got the right headset in place. And you can even also try refreshing your browser. That also tends to work. And if all else fails, try leaving the webinar and coming back in. That usually helps as well. If you've got any questions throughout the webinar, fill it in the Q&A box rather than in the chat box, because it's just a little bit harder for us to track. So any questions throughout the webinar, just pop it in the Q&A box and we'll aim to answer them at the end during the Q&A panel at the end. And if we don't get to it, we'll reach out to you guys personally and answer it with you guys. This session will also be recorded and it will be available on demand. After the webinar, it will be available on the website and we'll also send you guys a recording by email after. And lastly, as our treat to you, we'll be sending all attendees a Visa voucher. So this will be delivered to your email address in a separate email in the next couple of days. So look out for that. All right, so to kick off, so today's first episode, we'll be discussing how you can increase efficiency of your creative production workflows. And so we'll start off with discussing what the importance of a brief is. And then Gavin will discuss the importance of having the right system or the right solution in place to allow for workflow flexibility. Then we'll go through ways to efficiently manage workload and capacity and how you guys can ensure consistent brand, messaging, and compliance throughout the whole approval process. And then finally, we'll talk about how to quickly report and measure the impact of your campaigns and creative assets. And then Josh will do a solution demonstration and then we'll host a Q&A panel at the end. And we'll wrap all of this up in the next 45 minutes. But before we start with the content, I'd love to introduce you guys to our two speakers today. So first we have Gavin Watson. Gavin, maybe give a bit of a wave. So he's been consulting marketing and agency teams for over 20 years. He's been helping them to improve their productivity, gain efficiencies, and minimize costs. And he's been working in companies such as WPP and Outfit. And he now joins Monday as our industry lead for the marketing and creative industry. So we're super stoked to have him on board. And I also would love to introduce you guys to Josh Jabathalak. So he leads our consulting team. Yep, give a wave. And for over 10 years, he's been helping organizations through their digital transformation journeys. He's worked in companies such as Zendesk, SAP, SAS, and Telstra. All right, so enough from me. I'm going to hand over now to Gavin. If you want to take it away, Gavin, and I'll move on to the next slide.
Thanks, Stephanie. It's a pleasure to be with you all today, and I'm certainly hungry now. I've seen all of those pizza topping ideas. I just wanted to start by saying congratulations to all of you on the call who are managing marketing programs or involved in the creative production process. I've been in this industry for a while now, and we're certainly living in unprecedented times, and the volumes of work and expectations are definitely not slowing down. If you just look at this flowchart as an example, it looks like a fairly basic process, but there are actually so many moving pieces going on that go on with the creative production process. So again, congratulations for being able to do what you do with so much going on. And I really like the statement that's on the screen here. Creative working hand in hand with marketing is what really drives effectiveness. And we're big believers of that here at monday.com. So let's look at briefing. Next slide, Steph. We recently surveyed 80 marketing creative teams and 67% said their briefs are ineffective, with 53% saying they are receiving briefs as documents or slides and other formats, and 11% saying their briefs are in formats such as a tap on the shoulder or a text message. I was recently in a review with a large brand and they produced 12 different briefing formats, in formats from PDFs to Word documents to PowerPoint slides and everything in between. We got to the point where we're about to figure out what to do next, and then they realized they're also receiving briefs via Slack. This was creating total chaos for their teams and productivity, and ultimately costing them time and money. So what is inconsistent briefs and misaligned content doing? Next slide, Steph. We've all been there, done that, where fields are mandatory or not mandatory on a form. There are no drop-down options and the form does not follow conditional flow. So you just leave things blank and move on. The data definitely supports this. 72% said obtaining the necessary missing information on a brief to get started is the single largest task that soaks up so much of their precious time. 30% of non-agency creative briefs are also inconsistent and incomplete. So it all obviously starts by having a great and accurate brief. Clear, concise, relevant information. I've seen many briefing systems over the years where you have to adjust how you work to suit the system rather than the other way around. A briefing system should actually support how you want to work, not making you work the way that the system works. At a minimum, a briefing system needs to be customizable and needs to have conditional logic. So what do I mean by conditional logic? It needs to be able to scale up and down according to the inputs. So let's say, for example, you're filling out a brief and you select a Facebook tile as the output type. All the other information should cascade away. It should only give you the information that relates to that Facebook tile that you're requesting. It also then needs to be able to scale in terms of how the conditional logic represents the workflow. So again, using that Facebook tile as an example, it should allow that brief, if the workflow determines it, to go directly to the team that's going to be working on that particular brief. It needs to be flexible. You should not have to brief in changes to a developer or into an IT team, or worse, even into a vendor to get changes made to the briefing document. It needs to have the flexibility for you to be able to control that and do it yourself. It also needs to be trackable so you can see what's going on with the briefs, along with automated notifications. So now let's look at the WorkOS. This is a true heart of what ties the workflow together. Imagine Lego blocks where each block represents a piece of the workflow and how you want to work. As you add the blocks together, they attach and remain attached. This is what the monday.com WorkOS is all about. It's about supporting how you want to work. We also have this concept of low code, no code. What does this actually mean? It essentially means you can program the workflows yourself. I've worked with many developers in my time, and I'm still in awe of what they can do. But with the monday.com WorkOS, I can actually make things happen myself. For example, using our automations, I can create a personalized notification each time I have a piece of content to send out to be reviewed. I set it up once and the WorkOS does the rest. I can even send tasks to a designer to review and create the next version live in the Adobe Creative Suite via our native integration. It's amazing to have this level of power and customization at hand without the need to get it developed or request put in a vendor to get it done. So now let's look at resource management. So we've touched on briefing and the WorkOS. Now let's look at what happens when you get to managing the workloads. Again, in my time, I've seen many different ways of managing resources, from multi-tab spreadsheets with weird and wonderful formulas to calendars and emails, even down to SMS messengers. All in all, this creates a lot of pressure on everyone involved and is highly ineffective. I was talking to a traffic manager at a large retail brand the other day, And she was telling me how hard it was to get freelancers at the moment, obviously with borders closed down and international travel, brought to a halt. As we talked more, she realized she had data that was not up to date and limited visibility to be able to move tasks between the existing team, as all the tasks were rigid and they did not roll up to a top level campaign. Had she had the ability to drill down from the overarching campaign to see all of the work being done and who was doing what and the various deadlines and dependencies within the tasks and the teams, she could have easily reallocated some of the non-vital tasks to focus on the vital tasks and removed the need for additional resources, albeit to say they're now a monday.com client. But my point is, managing a team's workload is not straightforward, and especially as we are now in a very remote workforce. Now more than ever, you need deeper visibility into how your workload is managed and a top-down and bottom-up view of what's going on. Okay, now let's look at approvals. So the hard work's been done, right? The brief's spot on, the tasks are being automated, resources are being managed. Well, not quite. Approvals are just as vital as the other steps in the process. Creating automated workflows to ensure creative content goes through the required approval process and creates an audit trail is a must-have in today's day and age. I remember a few years back where a campaign went to market with a 3D 4K TV advertised at the lower spec non-3D 4K price point, ultimately saving consumers thousands of dollars. Once they realised the error, they pulled it from the market, but the ACCC have received numerous complaints. Long story short, the company that put it to market was fined tens of thousands of dollars. Worse still, they were not able to track back to see the error, and if the error was at the vendor's end, as their processes were manual and stuck in emails, so they implemented online approvals. Really, online approvals should be able to allow you to mark up and annotate on files, add comments, compare revisions. It's a must-have for true workflow approvals. Having the ability to store this approval history and come back to it is also a must-have, as some industries actually require you to keep, I believe it's now 5 years of history of any consumer-facing offers put to market. So let's wrap this all up and look at reporting. Everything these days needs to be tracked and measured and available in real time. From speaking to many marketing teams, production teams, and executives, having the ability to capture the right insights at the right time helps everyone make data-driven decisions. Being able to optimize marketing spend is also really important. For example, having real-time actionable data like allocated budgets versus spend budget is really, really important. Teamwork insights allow for better process reviews and actually allows you to have meaningful whips. If you can then overlap this with real-time data from third-party platforms like Google, Facebook, or ad-serving platforms, you have exactly what you need to run an effective marketing and creative department in today's fast-paced environment. So enough from me. Now let's hand over to Josh to show us what a creative production workflow really looks like. Over to you, Josh.
Yeah. Thanks, Gav. Might pinch that screen now, if that's all right, Steph. Awesome. Some great insights there, and to continue to build on what you've mentioned, Gav, I'm going to take you guys through the monday.com marketing solution today. Monday.com is available on the browser, which we're looking at today, and it's also available on mobile devices, so Android, iOS. So you can take Monday with you anywhere you like. So what I'd like to take you through today specifically is that entire workflow that we have just discussed, and what we're looking at for housekeeping purposes today, if you are not familiar with Monday, is the platform within the browser. On the left-hand side here, we've got our workspace. We've actually got our dedicated Monday boards where we can build. And on the right-hand side here, we're actually in our requests and approval board here as well. Now within this board, we can actually see that this board has actually been broken down into a few groups, which actually make up our workflow. So any new requests would come and land into our new requests here. Anything that's been approved would get pushed into scheduled campaigns, then live, and also completed. On the right-hand side, if we look at the screen horizontally, you'll be able to see the different types of columns that we've got. We've got people columns, that due date columns, also start and end dates, and we've got our workflow process for our creative workflow as well. So we can see those stages, and as we move these items along, we'll see those different types of automations come through as well. But going back to the start of any kind of idea or any kind of piece of work that needs to be completed, it needs to be handed over, or it needs to be briefed in. Now, typically what we see is this sort of process typically managed via email or a sort of messaging application. But what we want to be able to do is actually add a little bit more structure to this. As Gab mentioned before, 72% of briefs that do come through are incomplete. So how we can actually improve this process is by actually bringing in our form function. Okay, so we can actually see here along the top, we've got our briefing form. Within the briefing form, we're able to capture all of the relevant information that we need. And what this is going to help with specifically, if you're managing this via email at the moment, is we're capturing all that information in one go. So there's no back and forth and, spending a couple of days to capture all the details that we need. We can actually do it all in one go. So in this view here, this has actually created a form based on the different columns that you have within your Monday board. Okay, and within this view, we can also make fields required, and we can also hide fields as well. Okay, so only the most relevant information can be captured, and some of those internal sort of columns don't need to be shown either. So within this view, we've set that form up how we like. We've also uploaded our logo, and there's two different ways that we can actually share this form. The first one is with a shareable link. So this is a static link that anyone can click on internally or externally to your organization to actually complete this form to receive that request. The second one is we're able to actually embed this form. So we can embed this form into an intranet. We can embed this form into potentially a SharePoint or even a landing page if that's what you wanted to do with capturing that information. All right, so from here we can go ahead and we can actually load this form, and this is how the form would actually render. Okay, so we can go ahead and we can actually start to fill out some of these details, and we can also populate some of the information. So let's say this is going to start at the end of July. We can populate some information around the campaign description, and we can also add assets as well. So we can come into this view and select the asset that we want to upload, and this is going to help us add context to the request as well. From here, what we also want to be able to do is really clearly identify and categorize the type of request so we can traffic manage this in the right way. Now, within this, we're able to select different types of categories that can be customized to however you like. And we can even select different types of brands. And as we know, sometimes the creative function is a bit of a shared function and can overlap across multiple different brands and subsidiaries and companies potentially as well. We can also here categorize certain information around region as well. So if it is determined by where the locality of this particular campaign is going to be delivered, we can also capture that information here. From there, I can go ahead and submit. But what it's actually done is it's actually flagged something that was incomplete. Okay, so with these required fields, we can really ensure that we are capturing all of the information that we do need and nothing that we need is going missed. So I missed the actual end date of this campaign, so I can populate that. And I can go ahead and I can submit that now. All right. So now we can actually see when we go back to our Monday board that this new request has come through. Okay. So the next step for us is to actually communicate and approve this. But before we do that, we also need to find a resource that is going to be available to take on this piece of work. So from here, what we can do is we can actually go into our monday.com resource allocation view, which is what we call our workload view. And within this view, we can see all of our available resources, and we can also see what capacity they are at. This capacity is attributed by effort spent, and there's multiple different ways that we can allocate effort by tasks. And this is consolidating all of my resources that are working across all tasks and bringing it into one single view to show me where everyone is at. So based on this view, I can actually see here as an example, Annabelle is over capacity, okay? And this is actually based on a 38-hour week. And as an example, she's been, allocated 47 hours of total tasks. So what we may need to do in this example where someone is showing red, we want to redistribute that workload. So we can actually come into this view here and potentially reassign this to someone else. So I'm going to remove Annabelle and add Damon to this view. I can also mention Damon in this and say, please. And now I've created some distribution and ensured that the workload is nice and even. Now, going back to our example where we are able to find a relevant resource to take on this piece of work, we can see here that Christian's actually available. So we're going to go back to our request and approval board, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to assign this to Christian, okay? So once I assign Christian to this, I can send him a quick note, letting him know that I'm signing this to you. So, docs. We can also add documentation, so we can attach files from any resource or potentially from your PC as well. And from this process, I can go ahead and I can approve this. Now you can see there's a couple of different types of approval buttons here. And what's actually going to happen is a few automations in the back end when I approve this. So if I go ahead and I approve this item, it's then going to automatically move into my scheduled campaign. So that removes a click for me. But not only that as well, it's actually created a templated Monday board for me for Christian to be able to actually follow the standard steps for that type of campaign that we're running. So we can see all of the different stages: research, creative, copy, design, all of the typical steps that we would go through. But instead of having to reinvent the wheel, we've got all of those steps laid out for us here. Now within this view, it also links back to our high level view, and going back to Gav's message around having that high level visibility into those individual tasks and responsibilities, and being able to move those needles, having a really clear view of where everything is at with the linkage between those different Monday boards, which is a function that we called multi-board mirroring. Now, if we come into this view here, what we can actually see is our different stages. So the research stage is already begun and is ready to start. Now, what I would like to just show you is the unfiltered view. Now, within the unfiltered view, what we can actually see within this is also the time that is being spent at this stage, okay? So now if we're able to go ahead and complete this, what's going to happen now is we're going to hand over to our creative team over to the right, okay? And this is an automation that's built into Monday that happens automatically for us, and it's handed that over. It's stopped the timer, and the timer's really great, not to be a big brother and really know, how long each individual task is taking, but really to understand overall how long that particular step in your workflow takes, so you can continually test and improve as well. So we can see that creative function has started, and we've actually automatically handed the baton over to Andrew for this specific piece of work as well, and that's happened automatically. So this is saving us time to actually hand over to the next responsible person by building those automations into the back end of Monday as well. Okay, so that's a really quick view on how we can automate that workflow and that process. Now, Andrew would have been briefed on that actual piece of work to happen. Now, what he can actually do, or Christian, if he wanted to actually make some changes to the particular asset that we're trying to work with, is we can actually click onto that particular file within this view. Okay, and within this view here, we can see that file. We can also start to add some annotations as well. So if I'm speaking on behalf of Christian and I say, Andrew, as our creative resource, please change to green. That's a really quick and easy way for us to communicate in context on a specific asset. Okay, and we can see all of the updates that have happened across that particular asset. Now, the next part would be for Andrew to come in and complete that piece of work. Now, he might be working in Adobe Creative Cloud, which also has an integration with Monday. And potentially what would happen next is we would need to manage the versions. Now, Andrew would be able to come and upload that new version of that file that's been updated. And within this view, we can see all the versions that have happened in the past as well, and what is our current version also. So this helps maintain that audit trail and visibility of all of the changes that have happened so far. Now, the next step for Andrew might be to actually mention one of our stakeholders, or internal or external stakeholders that actually need to approve this. And let's say that's Gav, and we can ask, please approve. All right, so that gives us complete visibility, auditability, and also communication in context on that particular asset in one place. All right, cool. So that's managing assets and approvals. What I'd also like to take you guys through really quickly is around the flexibility of the platform. What we understand is creative teams and lots of different types of supporting teams like to work within Monday in different ways, and we want to ensure that we're able to support that. So within this view here, what we're able to see is a few different types of views that are also available. And one that's really popular with creative and marketing teams is our Kanban view. The Kanban view is a really nice, clean view that allows us to move along our tasks when and where required. So as an example, if I wanted to move this to ready to start, I could do that. And I can also customize the view in lots of different ways as well. And also bring in views and details or different columns that are most relevant for us to operate within this type of view. The other thing that we would like to be able to see is a really nice, clean overview of where everything's tracking. If we are managing campaigns and start and end dates, we may need to really understand what needs to be delivered this week, what's on our plate, and a Gantt chart was a great view for being able to see that information. Another example is managing a calendar. This is great for a social media calendar, so we can see exactly what's on for this month, this week, and even down to the day as well. And we can break that down by time as well. All right, so that's some of the different ways that we can visualize information. And I'll just say that if any of these changes happen in these different separate views, they all flow up into one place and act as a single source. The next thing that I'd like to take you through is in a lot of situations where we're working with creative teams, we have a lot of in-house resources, but we also may lean on external resources as well, such as freelancers. We may have a list of external resources that we reach out to for different parts of work. And what Monday allows us to do is actually bring in those external resources, such as freelancers, to come in and collaborate on work. We also may want to actually collaborate with external stakeholders as well. So we're ensuring that we're getting approval from external stakeholders to ensure that we're moving along, and we're all actually collaborating in one place as well. So within monday.com, we are able to invite guests into the platform. And on the left-hand side here, you can see all of our members. So these are our internal users, all of our internal team members. On the right-hand side are our guests. So these are people that are external to your organization, but are able to come and collaborate in monday.com free of charge. So that's a great way to be able to hold our, our potential external resources and external stakeholders accountable as well, and to also be able to set expectations. Continuing on that thread of setting expectations, what we can actually do is we can also create a shareable view of this workflow as well. So what we can actually do is come into our shareable settings, and we can actually share this view itself by loading a new link and making this a publicly available resource. This is great for for potential expectation setting across the business. If people are asking or constantly requesting sort of updates on where things are at, this is a great way to be able to set that expectation, really streamline the communication, ensure that you're spending more time on actually delivering the work instead of giving people updates. Cool. Before I jump into the final piece, what I'd like to really quickly take you guys through is the opportunity to actually extend monday.com as a platform to all of the other types of tools that you use within your creative marketing team. Some of the more popular ones are Adobe Creative Cloud, Google Ads, Facebook Ads, HubSpot, and even potentially Salesforce and Jira as well. I find that Jira is particularly effective working with product and development teams, and is a great way to ensure that we're communicating on the same thread within one place, and we're also syncing updates between those different systems without having to duplicate. Cool. So just to wrap up and bring everything together, what I'd like to take you through is our dashboard functionality. Our dashboard functionality brings together all of our different pieces of work into one place. This view is great to be able to manage numbers, budgets, costs, anything like that, and also is able to provide us some really clear performance indicators as well. Now, within this view, we can also manage our ability to see what needs to be delivered, but also potentially any kind of pending approvals as well. So what I really like about this dashboard, it is not just colorful, but it is also a dynamic view that we can drill down into as well. So I can see that this Facebook tile has actually been declined. So what I may actually want to do is come into this view and say at Annabelle and say, go ahead and update that, and you can see how I can really quickly go from a 30,000 foot level view right down into a potential bottleneck or a problem, really quickly mitigate and move on without having to spend too much time diagnosing things. What I really like about dashboard functionality as well is that we have the ability to walk into an executive meeting and really be able to illustrate quite clearly where we are at within our business and our operation, but also in the same instance, be able to use the exact same view to be able to run potentially my one-on-ones with my team. So I'm not having to build a different dashboard. I can really simply filter this by a specific person or any of those different types of metrics that we're tracking to create a nice consolidated view that I can support my team with as well. So look, just going back to what we've covered so far, we followed the entire briefing process, what it looks like from a workflow and approval, and also managing resources, annotations, managing versions as well, integration potential, and also how we can wrap it all up into one nice clean view with our dashboards. Thanks. Gab, back to you.
Thanks, Josh. That was a fantastic overview, and I guess really only skimmed on the surface of the capabilities of monday.com. So as you've heard and seen today, monday.com's mission is to help creative and marketing organizations work the way that you want to work with a flexible work OS and truly optimize your creative production processes. This can clearly be shown with us working and servicing over 200 plus industries, from the likes of fast moving consumer goods to retail, to QSR, technology to media and entertainment organizations, and many more. And we'd love to have you as a company that we can add to this list. So moving to the key takeaways from today, it can really be summarized into 3 key points. Number 1 being there are many benefits to briefing makeover and reviewing your briefing processes. A work OS allows you to reimagine and control your content production process. And the third one, just how vitally important it is to have real-time data at your fingertips. I mean, you saw a snippet of that with the reporting dashboard that Josh showed at the end there. So with that, I'd like to hand over to Stephanie and open up to Q&A.
Awesome. Thanks, Josh. Thanks, Gavin. I hope you all found that presentation valuable. So there's been a lot of questions that have come in. We'll try to get to most of them, at least in the next 10 minutes. So the first one that's come in is, what are the options for approvers to provide feedback on content produced, especially video? So this person uses Whipster at the moment for video collaboration across our business teams. So what are the options for approvers to provide feedback on content produced? Who would like to take that question or tackle that question?
Take that one. So Whipstar, I'm not sure if it has a direct monday.com integration, but if it does have an API, that's potentially something that we could sync as well into Monday. From a annotation perspective, that's something that can be done in the status column and potentially through the annotation function within the file column as well. Hope that helps.
Awesome. Thanks, Josh. We've got another one that's come in regarding audit trails. So regarding audit trails, once projects are delivered and moved to a completed projects board, is there a limit to how many rows of data that could remain there permanently? If yes, would you just recommend periodically exporting out info about completed projects to Excel? So pretty much this person's asking, in terms of audit trails, how can they export it? How can they, get this reporting?
Yeah, so a really good way to be able to manage that is potentially from a high level board. So we have a high level approval and our workflow, as we kind of showed you on the demonstration. If you're managing completed tasks and wanting to move them out, you can leave them on the board. We do have a 20,000 row limit. If you are managing a larger number than that, it can be archived, or we could potentially move that completed item into another Monday board as well. So that's an automation that we can do in the back end. So once it gets completed, it automatically shifts to another board as a historical view.
Awesome. And we've got another one about briefs. Can you have different briefs in the one workspace? So with a drop down for different assets and projects, as different assets, for example, will require different information.
Yep, you definitely can. So you can actually have multiple different types of forms, and that's specific to a particular type of workflow, but it still flows through into the board in the same way, but it will capture and populate different columns of information depending on the request.
Awesome. And this one is probably for you, Gavin. How can I encourage my team to ensure that they fill in the brief with enough relevant information?
Yeah, there's definitely a number of different ways to do that. I mean, as I mentioned, the conditional logic's a great way to do that. Obviously, you're not, over stressing them with information to fill in that it's not relevant. So the briefing process can then follow requesting the information that they need. The other way is obviously to make all of the fields mandatory. That's a great way to enforce that you're getting the information you want. And I've also seen some really good cases where people are giving examples. So within the area where they're requesting the information, they actually have an example below it. And that example then really drives the user to input relevant information, being able to see an example of the type of information they're requesting. So there's a number of different ways you can do it, but they're probably the key ones I'd focus on.
Yeah, and to add to that, Gav, as well, as you probably know, we can actually create a drop-down list. What we find is really useful for creative teams as a catalog of available potential assets as well. So it sort of fixes the different types of options, and it's not being written in different ways. And it really helps with our reporting later on, so we know how many tiles we delivered, or how many webinars we delivered, or whatever it might be.
Sounds good. All right, so this question is in relation to a certain part in your demonstration, Josh. So in the example where Gavin was tagged to approve the asset, is there a way that Gavin can see all his tags until he actions? So I know that it triggers a notification, but what if Gavin doesn't get to it for a few days? What happens there?
It's a great question. What we can actually create within our dashboard view is where I was mentioned. So anything that you were mentioned would flow through automatically into your dashboard. So if there's anything that you missed, it's all going to be in one place.
Nice, nice. And someone's asked, how is the timer activated? So, you know, in that part in your demo where it starts tracking the time, how is that activated?
Yeah, so that's actually triggered by an automation. So it is a if and when rule. And if that person, hopefully that person's still on the call, but I can show you really quickly how it's done. It's an if and when statement in our automations. And basically, we set a time tracking column. So there's a time tracking column. And based on that, when a status changes to X, we then start time tracking column. And when it changes to a different status, it stops the time tracking column. And that determines exactly how long it's been going. But in some cases, it's not always so effective because we work across multiple different sort of tasks. So we can actually add the sessions in there as well.
Nice, what a cool feature. Another question is, can we allocate work based on hours rather than days? So example, 2 hours voiceover to record. So probably a type of project that they were thinking of specifically.
Yeah, absolutely. So we can actually set the effort of the capacity in different ways. And that can be based on hours, days, it could be on time, it could be, you know, based on dollars, it could be anything. So we have that flexibility to set capacity in different ways as well.
Nice. And this question's probably better suited to you, Gavin. So you spoke a lot about at the beginning, the best practice around briefs. This person has asked, what fields should I be including in a brief?
Yeah, no, definitely a good question. And I mean, the beauty of having conditional logic that you can run within the forms allows you to have many different questions that can be answered. So as Josh talked about before, you can have drop downs, you can have free text fields, you can have, you know, timestamps where you can put in the time. So really, I mean, it comes down to, at the end of the day, the type of content that you want to be produced as the output. So you can have all of that built in the back into the forms, but then really based on the input from the user, they're then only answering the questions that relate to what makes sense around the type of content that's being output.
Awesome. And I think I've just got to ask the last question now, guys. Sorry, I won't be able to get through everything, but we are running out of time. So last question. Can you please share steps on how to make projects with shareable links so that I can share it with stakeholders again, please? So I think this was part of your demo, but this person missed it. So can you please share steps? Yeah, can you please share how to make your projects shareable to stakeholders?
Yeah, absolutely. We would love to take you through that in a little bit more detail. Maybe it's a good idea just to fill out the form so we can get in touch to take you through that, definitely.
Awesome. All right, guys, that's all we have time for today in terms of Q&A. But before we wrap up, I wanted to take you through some of the resources that we have available. So we've got our next Amplify Your Marketing webinar coming up on August 18 at the same time, 11 a.m. And we'll be discussing ways to supercharge your marketing planning and task management. So another really cool topic. And you can register for this at the Amplify Your Marketing webinar page. Actually, I might just paste that in the chat right now so you don't miss it. And you'll also receive an email to download the 6 secrets to impactful marketing guide. All you got to do is fill in the feedback form and you'll be able to receive this guide. And lastly, if you guys have any further questions, comments, have ideas for the next topic for future webinars, we'd love to hear more about it. Or if you just want to know a little bit more about our marketing solution, fill in that form that I've sent through in the chat and we'll get back to you in the next day or so. And as a final reminder, all attendees will be receiving a $25 Visa voucher in a separate email in the next couple of days. So keep an eye out for that. And if you don't have it next week, please reach out to us and we'll make sure you guys have it. All right, guys. hope you guys enjoyed that session. Hope you have an awesome rest of the day, and we'll see you all next time. Bye.
Thanks.